for years. Not many Egyptians wanted it. They prefer to have US dollars instead. Many believed that currency was a lot more stable. But Egypt's reserves of dollars have been running out. Tourism and investment in Egypt have fallen after the 2011 revolution that removed President Hosni Mubarak and the military coup that ousted his successor, Mohamed Morsi, 2 years later. To stem the flow, the Egyptian government ordered $1 would only buy about 9 Egyptian pounds. A huge black market in foreign currency was created. That allowed Egyptians to get many more pounds for their dollars. But they paid high prices for doing it, and the government wasn't seeing any tax from the profits of the black marketeers. So now the Egyptian pound is being allowed to trade freely on the foreign exchange markets.
It was impossible for us to allow 2 markets for foreign currency to continue to exist. It was essential for us to give Egyptian banks the strength and the ability to keep this money inside the banking system.
Freeing up the Egyptian pound was part of a deal with the International Monetary Fund. It's now more likely to give Egypt around $12 billion. Another condition is that Egypt lowers or stops subsidies on fuel. Prices are expected to jump by about 65% in the next year. Subsidies have already been cut on household electricity, and the price of sugar has gone up. Some say Egypt's economic woes have little to do with the US dollar.
My take, the Egyptian pound collapsed. Our economy is based on the money spent by the tourists, the value of the currency they use in our markets. Our economy is not well structured. It is simply because we have a dictatorship, even when it comes to our economy. The military wants to control everything.
Egyptians have been criticizing the government of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for having only vague ideas about fixing the economy. The president himself has been mocked for saying he would sell himself to benefit Egypt and for asking Egyptians to donate the equivalent of around 10 US cents to the government every day.
Every time we try to purchase any item, the prices go up and everyone says it is the dollar. Look at the dollar value. We cannot pay our bills.
Freeing the Egyptian pound may be welcomed by international investors, but Egyptians are likely to continue facing hardship, at least in the short term. Rob Matheson, Al Jazeera.
Dalia Fahmy is Assistant Professor of Political Science at Long Island University and a member of the Egyptian Rule of Law Association and joins me from New York. Good to have you on our programme. Can a devaluation of the Egyptian pound really boost the economy as the government would like?
So liberalization in this regard is supposed to, but it doesn't happen in the way with which the Egyptian government has actually done it. If we look at the manner with which this has happened, the flotation or devaluation was supposed to happen about a month ago, and so people have been waiting in anticipation, which kept the price of the dollar decrease in terms of the Egyptian pound, which reached about 18 pounds to $1. Suddenly, the central bank announces today that it's going to do this, and right away you see that the stock index reduces by jumps by 8%, and the interest rate is now 14.6%. So this lack of predictability, even in the manner with which it was announced, leads to a level of uncertainty. Now, when the CBE sets the price at 13 pounds and then raises it to 15.75 pounds, you see that even the domestic banks are not predictable in their future, and so the decline of the value of the Egyptian pound will continue.
Well,
now, this $12 billion
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt too much, but really fiscal policy success depends on political stability and division. For our international viewers, Egypt's been through the mill over the last 5 years with one coup or another, and the international community is looking at a country that is rather, well, more than rather unstable.
So it's not just politically unstable. There's increased repression in Egypt. We know that there are 50,000 political prisoners. There's lack of accountability, transparency. There are disappeared individuals. There are members of the press in prison. And so politically, Egypt is struggling. In terms of tourism, it's worse today than it ever has been. But really, in terms of the cost of living, half of the Egyptian population lives on less than $2 a day. And when you see the increase of imports, especially on things like sugar, on oil, on wheat, rising in price between 35 and 65%, the cost of living is not just increasing. This strategy, what that is meant to improve the cost of exports, is not really going to benefit an import-driven economy. And so the long-term ramifications of policy that's not really thought out, that is done in a haphazard way, is not going to take advantage of this IMF moment. The $12 billion over 3 years, $4 billion directly from the IMF, but $6 billion coming from other areas, including the World Bank, China, and other countries, are not going to offset the enormous deficit of the Egyptian economy. And it's not going to help bring in foreign investors. And if foreign investors want to come in, they're going to want to see the return on their investment dollarized. And when there is a run on the dollar, this is going to further hurt the Egyptian pound.
Well, there we will have to leave it for the moment. It's certainly one story that we'll be watching very closely. Dalia Fahmy, thank you for joining us from New York. Well, still ahead here.